Today, we're talking about one of those gaming facts that sounds fake until you actually stop and think about it. The Xbox Series X and Series S have outsold the Sega Genesis, also known to many outside North America as the Mega Drive. That statement alone feels like it should come with an asterisk because the Sega Genesis is one of the most iconic consoles ever made. It's a system that defines Sega as a serious competitor, helped shape an entire generation of gamers, and gave us characters, franchises, and attitudes that still echo through gaming culture today. And yet, here we are in a world where a modern Xbox console family has surpassed it in lifetime sales. To understand why this is such a big deal, you have to understand what the Sega Genesis represented in its time. When it launched at the end of the 1980s, the Genesis wasn't just another console entering the market. It was Sega planting a flag and declaring war on Nintendo's dominance. This was the era of playground debate, magazine ads with attitude, and marketing that openly mocked the competition. The Genesis was fast, it was edgy, and it felt like it was aimed directly at older kids and teenagers who wanted something cooler and louder than what Nintendo was offering. Games like Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, Shinobi, and Phantasy Star weren't just popular, they were cultural touchstones. For many players, the Genesis wasn't just their first console, it was their identity. By the time the Genesis had run its course, it had sold roughly 30 million units worldwide, an enormous number for its era. Back then, selling that many consoles meant you were one of the giants of the industry. Console generations were shorter, global launches were fragmented, and gaming itself was far more niche than it is today. The Genesis achieved those numbers without digital storefronts, without online multiplayer, without patches, subscriptions, or downloadable content. Everything lived on a cartridge, and once a console was off store shelves, that was basically the end of its growth. Fast forward to 2020, and Microsoft launches the Xbox Series X and Series S into a completely different gaming landscape. This wasn't a clean, easy launch either. The Xbox Series consoles arrived during a global pandemic in the middle of supply shortages, manufacturing delays, and unprecedented demand for consumer electronics. On top of that, they launched into a market where traditional consoles were no longer the only way people played games. PCs, cloud gaming, mobile gaming, and subscription services all competed for attention in ways that simply didn't exist during the Genesis era. Despite all of that, the Xbox Series family steadily moved units year after year. One of the most important factors in this story is we're not talking about a single console, but a family of systems. The Xbox Series X represents Microsoft's high end vision, powerful hardware, 4K gaming, and performance focused design. The Xbox Series S, on the other hand, is arguably one of the most important strategic moves Microsoft has ever made. It's smaller, cheaper, digital only, and far more accessible to casual players, families, and people who might not want to spend top dollar on a console. That lower barrier to entry dramatically expanded the potential audience, especially in markets where price matters more than raw power. This is where the comparison to the Sega Genesis becomes especially interesting. Sega didn't have the option to release multiple SKUs aimed at different price points and audiences. There was one Genesis, and that was it. Microsoft, by contrast, built an ecosystem. You're not just buying a console, you're buying into Game Pass, backward compatibility, crossplay, cloud saves, and digital library that follows you across hardware. The Xbox Series consoles benefit from years of infrastructure that simply didn't exist in the early 1990s. It's also important to understand that outselling doesn't mean outclassing or out-influencing. The Sega Genesis had a cultural impact that numbers alone can't measure. It helped normalize the idea that gaming could be edgy, competitive, and aimed at more than just kids. It pushed hardware performance forward and forced Nintendo to respond. Without the Genesis, the industry we know today probably looks very different. The Xbox Series didn't have to fight that same battle. It exists in a world that consoles like the Genesis helped build. What the milestone really shows is how massive the gaming audience has become. 30 million units used to represent a staggering achievement. Today, it's still impressive, but it's no longer unthinkable. Gaming is global, mainstream, and deeply integrated into everyday life. Consoles stay relevant longer, Software ecosystems evolve instead of resetting completely, and sales accumulate over time rather than peaking and disappearing quickly. The Xbox Series surpassing the Genesis isn't about one console beating another. It's about the scale of the modern industry compared to where it once was. There's also something poetic about this moment. Sega, the company that once challenged Nintendo head on with the Genesis, eventually exited the hardware business entirely. Microsoft, which entered the console market a decade later with the original Xbox, has now built a platform capable of quietly surpassing one of the most legendary systems of all time. It's a reminder that gaming history isn't static. The giants change strategies, evolve, and success looks different in every era. At the end of the day, this comparison shouldn't be taken as a knock against the Sega Genesis or as blind praise for the Xbox Series. It's a snapshot of how far gaming has come from cartridge and CRT TVs to digital libraries and online ecosystems. It's a reminder that the consoles we grew up with laid the groundwork for the ones we play today, and that every generation builds on the last. If you enjoyed this video and found this breakdown interesting, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Thanks for watching, and as always, game on.